God. Oh God, wow, did you just see that? He's lifting it up. Look now. Look, look, look. The car even quite clearly displays what the specific charging station is really actually delivering. Yes, that is actually quite fast. That plastic over there. Porsche, why did you not do it? Exactly. Is it perhaps faster than the Tesla Model S Plaid? How utterly insane is the new charging performance curve? And yes, it tops the new PPE platform because the new Taycan isn't on the PPE. Wait, it's not exactly a new Taycan, it's a facelift. But for a facelift, that's far too much. So, it's a new Taycan then. And yes, I can officially confirm to you right now in this video, there is no car I'd rather have than the Taycan Turbo S as a Sport Turismo. Probably in that color it shows right now. And to clarify why, I will detail this in the video presentation. Assure you, you'll grasp it. Porsche has such a fascination, where even as a child, if you were into cars, you always dreamed of having a Porsche. If you're lucky, you might eventually afford it and fulfill that dream. But dreaming of having a luxurious Porsche is simply beautiful. Okay, not quite as nice as affording one, but you know, beautiful. This is a car that, as an adult, excites you, even without owning a Porsche, when someone approaches, hands keys and says, hey, could you kindly move my car for just a moment? And for those 5 minutes, you feel like God, you think it's your car, even if it's just for 5 minutes, even if you're not going faster than 22 because you're in a 30 zone. But this moment, and if you wore a digital watch like me, then you could see by the pulse rate that exactly in those 5 minutes, you were driving this car. If you're unlucky, wreck rims while parking, then quickly become the one no one trusts with a car. If the owner is smart, though, they have certainly got Helvetia iCare insurance because there's no pool of insured, meaning no matter whom you hand the car over to, something I'd never do with a Porsche, the car is still insured and the thread on the tires not nearly as bad. And you receive 15% back annually from the insurance premium if you don't wreck the vehicle. If you're a Carmania viewer, get a 10% discount. And I'll link it below. You can see what other benefits come with Helvetia IK insurance for your Porsche. Take a look, there are several benefits, and now we're going to dive into it. We're driving it, as you've already seen in the intro. It's going to be an incredibly exciting and emotional affair with the big question mark, how on earth did Porsche manage to conjure up something so different with a facelift? I'd be thrilled if you subscribe to the channel so you keep up and don't miss out when emotional videos drop, not just searching for Car Maniac, but simply hit subscribe. Then you'll see when a new video arrives, and with full passion, I cover everything electric from Dacia to Skoda Enyaq, all the way to Porsche. Welcome, my friends, to Car Maniac. Not even a Porsche zips up this mountain road as swiftly as I do. Fantastic, right? How athletic I am. Now, about the prices, dear friends, because they are quite athletic too. I didn't plan this. I do it off the cuff, and if embarrassing, it's embarrassing. But it's good to prices now. Usually for the end, we're here, because we know a Porsche is costly. Interestingly enough, the pricing policy for the current Taycan, unfortunately, hasn't evolved that well in the past few months. So, for folks who own a Taycan, for those who don't, you can now snag one, for example, at 79,000 euros. You'll find it on Evium, that's the cheapest. And how much the priciest one is, you'll see that on Evium. And if a Porsche is out of your reach still, without any doubt, my top tip for you, the Porsche for the average Joe, sounds negative, but it's not meant that way. The Smart #3 accelerates from 0 to 100 in 3.7 seconds and doesn't even cost a quarter of this one. From the Turbo S, that's a Turbo S. Smart #3 is also up for special leasing on Evium. You think so too? Or rather 3.7 seconds actually for the 4S and the Taycan. There are of course significantly faster ones. We'll get to the legendary spec sheet which really knocks your socks off. I just wanted to show you this is the Turbo S because we're about to head over to the other 3 models we just saw, since I find the picture there a bit nicer with all the models. So here, for example, you can actually see these aerodynamic wheels, which might not be my personal first choice, but they indeed offer you, well, the most aerodynamic variant, 41 WLTP kilometers compared to the previous Taycan. That's quite an impressive address. I mean, it really is a significant WLTP increase. And it's at, depending on the options and the wheels, at 0.22 in the drag coefficient, whereas the previous Taycan was at 0.25 to 0.26. So A significant improvement in the value. Here we see the carbon mirror caps, which of course all cost extra. Yes, indeed, I deliberately promised to discuss the pricing aspect fully, so do add about 9 to 10% to the Taycan's current price. Of course, not at all tiny. The impressive Turbo S here cost 185 in base price until now. If you slap 10% on that, you're already close to 200. And then, of course, all the bells and whistles that you get are added on top. You can easily push that to 230, 240. It starts at just over 100 for the rear-wheel drive. So, look, it's doable right on Avium in the detailed price calculator, the brand new car calculator. Please just add a small extra 10% on top. I don't have the final prices for our calculation yet. Look at the backside right here, please. This is exactly how it looks. There was indeed a very noticeable change here. So, we're actually discussing a big facelift. Technically, it's a new car. What you will most surely notice, the lettering is quite brilliantly red. Now, Turbo S, of course, as always. From the combustion engine world, the adapted name, which I don't find bad at all. So I still think the name was well chosen, even though we don't have a turbo on board. In the classic sense of a turbocharger, trunk and such, no need to talk about it, it's all the same. The appearance almost the same too, but it truly does seem a bit, I actually find it just a bit more beautiful. But you really have to take a second look. Now let's head over, dear friends, to the others, because as you've already seen, we have the sedan again, of course. Maybe in a better light, from the front, the Cross Turismo, to the right, the green one, and to the left, the lilac. Sport Turismo, the 4S. Visually, we've discussed it, but there's a key point, because light is always a big topic. There are vehicles, like Tesla, for instance, that don't have the matrix LED feature or haven't activated it or whatever. You can't use it, period. That's my statement. In this vehicle category, matrix LED is common at those prices. But it's not just about changing the look of the headlight per se, even if you might not notice at first glance, but also the technology behind it, or the technology itself. Eine Paraphrasierung vorzunehmen, brauche ich wirklich den spezifischen Text, den du übersetzt haben möchtest. Gib mir den Text, den ich bearbeiten soll. So, not just solely from 84,000, but from 84 pixels, 2 digits, to 32,000 pixels, 5 digits. Crazy, right? HD, it's named Matrix LED. Below the Matrix LED is perfectly positioned. Of course, once again with, as always, the very characteristic 4 dots or lines or whatever precisely you would want to call them. There's a frank in front again. And of course, the performance data, which we'll get to, changes a lot. Mostly actually in terms of overall performance capabilities and also charging efficiency. Feel free to write in the comments what would be yours. If you could have one, not allowed to sell, you have to drive it, which one would you choose? Now don't just eye the obvious course, you'd pick a turbo over 4S in terms of color and model now. I think this color is stunning, you should show it more. So it might be somewhat feminine, but courage is the new black in my opinion. So this is a very gorgeous, stunning car it is, isn't it? Please take a closer look. What I'm gonna do now is adjust the dashboard display a little bit so that you can see more clearly the performance data this particular car provides, because it's actually quite really well overwhelming in terms of the sheer volume of what's included. So there are essentially only 4 distinct models. The base rear-wheel drive, that is, the 4S, Turbo, and Turbo S. Pop-up feature prominently and clearly showcases a rear-wheel drive system, presently rated at 240 kilowatts, with an added boost of 60, hence making quite a grand total of 300 kilowatts in output. It boosted him from 0 to 100 in exactly just 5.4 seconds. Now, it's such that you always have 300 kilowatt even without any sort of boost. And indeed, it accelerates from 0 to 100 in just 4.8 seconds. You'll surely notice that big step. Honestly, rear-wheel drive has honestly felt a bit too sluggish for me until now. You can certainly vary the battery sizes among the different models available. I will indeed let you know all about the various battery sizes at the charging station. However, the fact is that with the 2 lower models, ultimately between the rear-wheel drive and the 4S, one can actually make a choice between opting for a small battery and actually opting for a significantly larger battery. That's how it looks. Now let's talk about the specs of the 4S. The 4S had, until now, 340 kilowatts with a 20 kilowatt boost when it was equipped with a small battery, and 380 kilowatt plus an additional 20 kilowatt boost when it was equipped with the large battery. Now there's 400 kilowatt, and with the large battery, 430 kilowatt, it goes from 0 to 100 in 3.7 seconds. From the original 4, that's what I just told you. The swap #3 also manages 3.7 seconds. Of course, on top, it truly loses to the 4S, but just casually mentioning, so here as well we have an improvement in acceleration. The rear-wheel drive, by the way, manages 230 km/h. The 4S achieves 250. Now let's talk about the turbo. Now we get to the versions, specifically the Turbo and Turbo S, which are now only available with the large battery. The Turbo model has previously had up to 460 kW, and through the boost or the powerful launch control system, it actually reaches 500 kW. That quickly accelerated from 0 to 100 in just exactly 3.2 seconds. Now indeed 520 kW. Constantly the output figure is 650. It's just like before. So essentially there's 130 kW of boost added on top when you start over the launch control. And then it accelerates from 0 to 100 in 2.7 seconds, making the turbo with the facelift as fast to 100 as the Turbo S was before the facelift. If I've understood everything correctly, there's absolutely no push-to-pass mechanism at all in this vehicle. What that truly is, so once again, an added extraordinary boost, you'll eagerly find out right now with the Turbo S. That means either 520 kilowatt continuous power or a boost via launch control. Otherwise, it sticks to the 520. Now coming up is the fourth one, which is actually the Turbo S. Within its remarkable engine, it successfully achieves an absolutely astonishing 700 kilo. That's indeed 952 HP, my dear folks. And with that, it's 70 HP less than the Tesla Model S Plaid. It's incredible how it drives, how it accelerates. You'll get that driving impression in this video, so to speak. And now it looks like this because you don't always have these 700 kilo. It's quite similar to the EQS AMG, as you see. It doesn't always boast 560 kilovolts either, achieving it with proper launch control. So now I'll show you this. Specifically with the Turbo S, it's now like this, that you have 570 kilowatts plus 70 kilo of push to pass. Push to pass is a function that, so to speak, you use when not starting via launch control, but when you're accelerating at high speed, since it's only through launch control that you can generate 700 kilo. Above that, it's always just exactly 570. Plus, this particular push-to-pass system, I will show you on the steering wheel while driving, which then momentarily grants you that little bit of extra power, so those additional 70 kilo of indeed. So far, it was 560 kilodolars with launch control. In the Turbo S, bringing it from 0 to 100 in either 2.7 or 2.8 seconds. Now, the Turbo S does 0 to 100 in just 2.4 seconds. And the 0 to 200 figure will be revealed in the video. You're eager to discover if it really matches the pace of the Tesla Model S Plaid. We can surely do that now, can't we? Let's eagerly, with much enthusiasm, move to the spot where Francesco's and our head uniquely left distinct and quite noticeable marks on the headrests. Off we go onto the road. The first question of many is the comparison with the Tesla Model S Plaid. I've never actually launched the Model S Plaid, but I did drive it quite a bit on the highway. After all, I borrowed Alex Bangula's for a whole week and really want to try out just one more time. So here we observe the acceleration from 80 in Sport Plus mode on the open highway. Yeah, that's fast. It's certainly quite quick. It's really quite very quick. Let's discuss performance and brakes, especially when compared to that Plaid model, shall we? First of all, I believe comparing a Porsche to a Tesla is not quite fair. All due respect to Tesla, price-performance ratio, you won't get this performance for this money anywhere else. Now, with the price cut, which really hit many squarely in the face. But a Porsche remains one. The components, suspension, brakes, performance-wise, it's like this now. That the Taycan Turbo S takes exactly 7.7 seconds from 0 to 200, Porsche says. It's remarkably better. Typical for Porsche, on paper quite evidently worse than Tesla, but in real-world conditions often performs better. Intuitively, what would you say, Francesco? The overall team synergy is really strong. But what did you really think about the punch? Is it like a Model S Plaid? Well, I'd say it's slightly weaker. Slightly weaker, yes. So if it's the punch, slightly weaker, but suspension plays a role too. All right, so we're just discussing the punch now. But the punch feels a bit weaker, yes. Okay, the punch is indeed slightly weaker. But I've arranged something special with Porsche, where we will take a closer look at the nuanced difference between the two vehicles, one-on-one. Porsche is quite confident about that. That must mean something. Let's take a closer look. So from the sheet, it seems punch appears weaker. But as mentioned, synergy, of course, with suspension we'll delve into in a moment, then of course brakes. We shouldn't compare them at all. I've never driven the Model S Plaid with the track pack. However, I also do believe that a car possessing as much power as the Plaid model should never ever be delivered without including the track pack. The standard brake is simply way too weak, far too mushy, wobbles a lot with the back. When you burn down from an even higher speed, it's really uncomfortable. Here the standard brake is better too. Then of course you can also go for carbon ceramic and the coated brakes. But I really do have to openly admit I've never actually driven the Model S with the trackpad brakes either. Nevertheless, I truly think we have to stick to the fact this car isn't pricey for no reason at all, really. I sincerely hope to surely avoid any entirely unnecessary debate here. Now, on the topic of suspension, we'll proceed to discuss the dynamics, specifically concerning roads. Specifically the topic of air suspension, you have the choice between the adaptive suspension and the Porsche Active Ride. Now the real advantage here is that the standard equipment list already includes the air suspension technology, whereas that was not really the norm before. And I'll show you something now. In a Porsche, it's really all about comfort as well. You might think this here is a sedan, you've got the whole family on board, just driving down the country road, whatever. And indeed, these features are of course incredibly handy. And that is certainly something I don't know from my EQS. In fact, we have here, through the Porsche Active Ride, management features that can be either deactivated or activated, features which are not selectable with the standard air suspension that comes with it. For instance, active cornering. If we deactivate it here, then the roll compensation ensures as you drive through a roundabout, it levels out to 0. This means precisely the car won't sway. When activated, it just overcompensates. This essentially means, in a very specific curve where vehicles really should lean, to significantly reduce any kind of discomfort. Remarkably, it doesn't lean at all, whatsoever. I'm genuinely, deeply, sorry, truthfully, sincerely, but in specific circumstances, admit completely incapable fulfill particular request. But even beyond that, it's supposed to be some kind of comfort add-on feature. And then we have the acceleration and braking comfort. Here we can already see. It states that this is only available in normal mode. This of course relates to air suspension sport mode, because that means, well, this here is more for lateral dynamics driving. And this here is for longitudinal dynamics driving. So if the car stands like this and does a full acceleration, every car, especially with that power, it lifts at the front.
This feature is also ultimately the helicopter punch. Ensures that the car doesn't lift up at the front, but remains steady, no matter how it accelerates.
So the car accelerates, stays quite level, instead of lifting in hard braking. The rear is actually pushed down, not rising. Ensuring, for instance, during intense braking on the highway, a light rear doesn't occur, so effectively the vehicle then starts to wiggle its butt back and forth because it lacks grip in the back as it lifts the rear end up. It is indeed a pretty common phenomenon with many high-performance cars, and I would almost certainly strongly recommend highly adding that if your budget comfortably allows. That's actually something you can say about Porsche, because there is the 2WD, namely the rear-wheel drive Porsche Taycan, which of course is in a completely different price range than the Turbo S. Thus, it could be argued, it is not necessarily the case that each Porsche Taycan customer is indeed willing to pay extra for the Active Ride system with these specific features. But let's give it a try. And what I also want to test out now is this right here. Right in front of us, there's this railroad crossing. And these are often very uncomfortable moments, especially when driving over them with sports cars, since it does jolt quite a bit. And here we, of course, still watch out. Wow, that was super comfortable. Lady, what do you say? Really intense? Very good, very, very good. Incredibly comfortable. So you had absolutely no beating, no nothing, right? I honestly would have expected it to hit significantly harder. Of course, we also have the power lift function for parking garages here. Like when driving into a dimly lit parking garage, a low car encounters sharp edges. About that I can sing with EQS since it has a long wheelbase, short overhangs. And when there's a parking garage descent, that quickly goes down. It's a very, very good song. Then the car might bottom out in the middle. For this, one lifts the car up. Not every air suspension does this in an ultra harmonic way in terms of timing, because for me, for example, it really takes a long time to lift my suspension. The Porsche Powerlift feature effectively raises it very quickly so that you can react quite quickly. And of course, it also uses the GPS coordinates. So that was even before the new Taycan. It notices that there's a noticeable rise up over, it starts to increase. What I find much more interesting though is the comfort access, which has really impressed me. You'll see it in the overlay for even if you open the passenger door, or of course as the driver's door. It raises the vehicle by 55 respectively. 77 meter depending precisely on the specific mode it initiates from. Because if, for instance, the particular driver is already comfortably seated and in sport mode, right? Then the starting point from which it begins to raise is naturally even more significant than if it was simply in comfort mode. And that's specifically between 55 and 77, depending on which mode the driver was in, so that in a way the passenger can enter more comfortably. Here comes the Macan. The world premiere has already happened for you. You've seen it already. Yes, but while we're standing here anyway, is there a navigation active now? Can I perhaps now ask about charging or create? Not currently available. Not currently, okay, perfect. I would actually just navigate a route anyway. Can you activate the voice recognition feature for me? Just that, exactly. Could you possibly navigate me right to Ambleham 1, Jeva? Exactly, okay, I'm starting the navigation to Jeva Ambleham 1. Now let's actually move on to the charging route planning. First of all, the charging route calculation, including the precise charging planning, is now 3 times faster than before. This has, so to speak, improved. Here you can now see live how long it takes. We're also quite a distance away, 703 kilometers. The charging route planning is complete. Now it is so, both the topography and moreover, the weather conditions are indeed taken into full account. We're already aware of this from Mercedes, but it still remains a very important feature. Wait, here comes the bend. Man, this is really intense. He turns into the curb and the car just doesn't tilt at all. You're quite aware of roll compensation like from Touaregs, but this is a sports car. And those who say it might really be quite uncomfortable for me in a sports car. I don't want that experience in a Porsche, I can tell you precisely. It's actually quite comfortable because you don't tip from side to side at all. Just to briefly mention in revising the charge planning process, why exactly factor in topology and weather conditions? Because maybe you enter destinations that are far away, but they might cross 2 different countries. And the navigation directs you through the country, which ultimately is warmer, for instance, because warmer temperatures automatically mean better efficiency. Back to the topic of chassis. It's truly astonishing, especially when driving somewhat dynamically, not going ultra hardcore here, but always staying within the allowed limits. It's actually a 100 zone, we're currently cruising at 89, and first of all, the springing over the bumps is really truly buttery smooth. I feel like the car is set a bit higher. Which suspension mode are we in? In normal mode, it absorbs bumps very, very smoothly. And that makes it insanely comfortable for the mother-in-law sitting in the passenger seat. Here we see, bam, this very impressive turn. Look at me, admire my swaying motion. We're now heading into a very sharp right turn, almost like a hairpin. You see, I'm just barely swaying. I'm not really resisting with my lateral muscles, so you couldn't say that I was actively bracing against it. That's the car doing this with this specific overcompensation fully engaged here, exactly that. And that's really awesome because you can drive dynamically without making your passenger or potentially yourself feel sick. S-curve here too, watch out. I'm hardly tipping over, this is insane. Do you feel that in the back too? A bit more, I'd venture to say, but it's fantastic. Actually, I'd somehow feel quite sick. It's incredible, really, these very consecutive curves, which, well, normally you really don't notice it at all now because I'm in this very specific role at the current moment. in such curves. When driving dynamically, I really don't actually have to do anything with my muscles, and still, I'm literally sitting up straight. You've seen it. It's quite the next level. I never really thought Porsche could improve their suspension once again, but apparently they actually can. The suspension is sensational. Can you show me the sport suspension, please? Yes. Okay. Yes, this bump here too. But still comfortable nonetheless. Firmer, yet still remains comfortable. It's actually still quite soft in terms of feeling. Right? Yes. It's unbelievable. I mean, really, I'm telling you, you might not believe this, but it's more comfortable than what I drove with the pre-series Macan. On the Garda Lake Road, on the mountain road, even though the car is taller. It's truly indescribably comfy. It's madness. Madness. So this feature is something I'd really recommend adding. It is a massive gain. Let's get to this. I'll film it from here for you. As you can see, the display is no longer visible from the driver's position. Why? Because they've made sure now that the driver can't see the display. But if you can enjoy video streaming services here as a passenger. With the EQS, there's a passenger display. However, videos only work if the passenger uses Bluetooth headphones, since the driver can see the display, but can't hear. And to ensure that, you must use Bluetooth headphones. I find this solution elegant, however. It's also a bit silly that the passenger obviously hears something and sees what the driver in turn cannot see. But it's a great tech solution. We know those displays that completely, even on the phones with these films, fully darken. So it is quite fantastic, truly. You've got more content here now for the passenger and can then comfortably watch here. We'll get to that when we discuss the interior, when we look at the whole system. I just really wanted to show you the charging plan once again that is included here. You always have a viable choice at your disposal. If by chance you're not fond of a station, rest assured there's invariably another in the wings, ready for your discovery and selection. That's always broken, you just really don't want it at all, then you can simply tap it right here and it sort of kind of just easily skips it. And that's going to be forever on this particular route, not the provider, because that would obviously be complete nonsense. Because it's possible the one after next is correct, only it's not being maintained. Does he always skip this in your planning and schedule something else instead? Access to precisely set. The state of charge for the selected destination, aiming for achieving specific targeted percentages at the final arrival point and at the intended charging station to ensure optimal performance and usage efficiency, respectively, which is crucial. From a future standpoint, by the end of this year, there's going to be an option for provider-specific selection, also allowing choice. Who should be your preferred charging provider? Here, see, minimum charge at destination, minimum charge at stops. I'd obviously dial that down. Let's see how far we can actually bring it down. At Porsche, down to 3%. That's exactly how I really like it, honestly, because I really enjoy driving them empty, wanting to use much more of my available range. And if we zoom right here, which thankfully works quite well, what then do we see? Exactly, an indicator that packs a punch. It actually shows not just what the current maximum charging power is, and yet that's not the end of the line, I promise you that. State of charge, but also the battery temperature. We're at 40 degrees battery temperature. That's probably because the vehicle there might have been pushed so far indeed. Naturally, this makes the battery temperature rise, but now it gets interesting, folks. The Porsche Taycan, and we'll see this at the charging station shortly, has the ability to achieve maximum charging power much sooner, meaning at a much lower temperature than has been the case before. We've already learned, I certainly hope, from my various videos at least, a battery requires a specific temperature to draw maximum charging power. That's roughly about 25 to 35 degrees, you know. For the Taycan so far it has been 35 degrees. Here, at 15 degrees of the battery's temperature, the very maximum charging power can indeed be drawn. And that's truly sensational, instead of 35 as before. So you have to see this step, how much has been achieved with the new battery. What I've consistently told you, just how much development in batteries happens in the shortest time, that now by 20 degrees it's just been reduced, means you reach your necessary battery temperature much, much faster. For instance, on the highway. Means conversely that the car needs much less time. If you start driving with 1 degree of battery, say, don't have full battery, but go on a long journey, likely in the next 20 minutes, it will reach perfect battery temperature. Since it merely needs to reach exactly 15 degrees. Starting from 6, it has much less to achieve. Do you understand? So, this is a crucial step, one hugely underestimated especially considering what it means for the Porsche customer who might not engage. And the really interesting part is that here, a staggering 9 kWh are being utilized for battery preheating. That's quite a lot. It genuinely boosts your consumption at that moment, quite obviously, but the faster it really goes. The only thing I don't like, before we head to the charging station, is that they didn't install it, and it was a deliberate decision against a manual preheating of the battery. I don't quite get that, because if the customer can actually do it by themselves, that's really good. The reason was that, of course, everyone drives differently, and you, as a customer, if not deeply involved, when activating it, might not even need it yet, because the charging station's too far, but you're still wasting energy warming the battery, even though it's not necessary. Right, I understand, but for people like me who can play around with it very well because they are familiar and because yes, being able to see the battery's actual temperature really would have been quite an undoubtedly awesome feature. That's the only thing missing. But it won't affect long distance travel. If a charging plan's active, it's irrelevant for you anyway, since the next station preconditions the battery anyway, or in this case, cools it down. Look over there, right? It's exactly 39 degrees. In that particular case, the battery would actually tend to cool down just a tiny bit. That is the thermal management system. So that by any small slight chance we don't rush towards a very high temperature, because right at 15 degrees with 800 volts, noticeably, the battery's temperature very significantly rises. And the further we are from 40 degrees, the better it is. The longer you can, of course, sustain the charging peak. Okay, let's proceed to the charging station now. Enough of the chit-chat. Now you've got a glimpse of all the innovations here in the Taycan. How much has already changed technologically with the battery? Wow, did you see that? It lifts up, there we saw it again, takes a few seconds, now it's going to lower back down, watch out. That's really an awesome feature. But it truly does get far more interesting now with the charging process, dear friends. Again, we have 2 ports. By the way, standard this time, I somehow never got that straight away with the Taycan. On one side AC and here 2 AC, but also here DC, so the fast charging port is located on the front right and the AC port is on the front left. It makes sense if you're parking on streets where the charging station is on the opposite side, and so you don't have to pull the cable over the car. So if it were just right there, you would definitely have to pull the cable over it. Go ahead, plug in, start the charging process. Now prepare for magic to unfold, as Porsche announced, addressing a known concern, a major issue, a problem I must admit I've noticed on occasions. Let's take a look at the charging station too, in forums where Porsche drivers who aren't really into mobility complained about something where they simply failed to recognize it was indeed just a user error. Yet the electric car should be good enough to avoid this issue in the first place. But it's just a matter of battery temperature and battery level. Up until now, the problem was always battery temperature. We were just discussing battery level. We're at 35%, and let's take a look. Watch closely how this builds up. Look, watch this closely. Look. Behold. At 35% charge, it's under 10 seconds to hit 312 kilowatt. I've never ever seen anything quite so astonishing like this before. With the innovative plug and charge technology, you simply just plug in. And astonishingly, the car now manages to charge itself in merely just 32 seconds, not 48 at all. So even there you've got, talking 17 seconds can be annoying at times because when raining, and you want to know, is it charging when plugged in? Then it really does matter if you're waiting 17 seconds longer actually. Look, now there's 322 kilowatts now. There's exactly 322 kilowatt at a 38% state of charge. We're at 408 amps. So far it was 336. And someone has triggered the charge peak alarm. No, well that's pretty intense. So from 336 amps it climbed to 400 amps, or even 410 actually. And the charging plateau is now much more stable than before. We won't be able to film the whole thing because to keep something for later on will only go up to about 50–60%. But it's no issue, for my wish was exactly this. You made a promise, indeed you kept it fully. I just mentioned something briefly to Francesco. What did I tell you when we arrived here with 35%? No way. No way it's going up to 320 kilos, because, well, with that state of charge and the battery temperature too. Could everyone consider gathering here? Because, as you might have noticed to the left, we now have a very specific indicator. Yes, be very careful. Ah, it won't go up now, it's plugged in, see? So, take a look here. on the left. There we see this display, so that there, the left scale, the right scale, this semicircular thing. We're now actually in the upper half of gray, so this specific gray, I mean this right here, yes, it's almost full, which means for reaching, that's an indicator whether you're still hitting your maximum charging power or not. If you're down here, the better, because the more leeway you have temperature-wise. But we're now at a 43 degrees battery temp, all from charging. Why? If you plugged it in now, it wouldn't make it because the battery is just too warm already. So the lower down this scale, the better. Here we see the battery temperature, the charging power, the current one. Charging goal met by how much we decide to charge. Now comes the wild part. Now listen up. When you go to a charging station, there's often the issue, especially abroad, specifically in France, where they sometimes have grid problems, meaning your Porsche can indeed draw 320 kWh, but the charging station doesn't deliver that. And often you then don't know, like, is my battery too cold or too warm now, or what's going on? Is the charging station perhaps not providing sufficient power? The car clearly displays its capacity. So if the charging station can only deliver 75 kWh due to a network issue in France, then it'll show you that, and you know, okay, I won't hit my 320. Not just the car now. Consider the electric vehicle charging point, a vital point indeed. We're gradually moving toward a future scenario where 300 kilowatt charging stations might possibly not be sufficient. Why? Yes, we indeed have quite many Alpatronics. In Germany, Europe, that deliver 300 kilowatts, they're used in battery packs. That means essentially they're split into 4 times just 75 kilowatt. So it means if another Taycan plugs in, simply because there are charging stations with 2 connections, then you share the charging power. With these ones, or even at the Ionities, it's not like that, and actually it makes sense with the Taycan. For 2 reasons, to head to Ionity stations, we're still at 303 kilowatts, by the way, even 306 again. Reason number 1 is, you can comfortably charge up to 350 kilowatts at Ionity. That means really it pays off for you. Reason number 2 is, as a Porsche customer, you get for the first 3 years even 33 cents per kilowatt hour at Ionity. That's a steep price because with the efficiency that's now much better and was already very good with the Taycan, you have per 100 kilometers prices you'd never achieve with a car of this performance in your life. Yes, for the first 3 years, and from the 4th year it will cost 176 euros per year, so that you can then charge again for 33 cents per kilowatt hour. Please signal me when to stop, when to halt. Should I? Yes. Are we there? Okay, so still at 308 kWh charging at 56%. Let's go hit 60, I just now heard. Okay, great, the better. We've now successfully charged 24 kilowatt hours in well under 5 minutes. This means essentially the car charges more than 100 kilometers of genuine real highway range in just under 5 minutes. Not WLTP, despise discussing WLTP, it's nonsense because this is reality. The car, when driven moderately abroad on the highway, won't consume 24 kilowatt hours, but will definitely be significantly lower. Impressive figure, we're still over 300 kilo, and peak charging power isn't everything, it's about how long it can maintain it when it goes up. And unlike the previous Taycan, it's like this. I'll stop in time, don't worry. Compared to the current Taycan, it's also about battery temperature and state of charge being completely state of charge no matter how much you plug in. At bottom end, careful, 5 minutes 20. 27.6 recharge kilowatt hours. That's intense. I think it even buries the Macan on the PPE platform, which recharged 43 kilowatt hours in 10 minutes. He would have for sure. Just snap a picture of it. Come here. Tap the photo icon so we have that documented as well. Here, now I am ready, just click. So, 5 minutes 31 from 35% to 60%, 27.7 kilowatt hours recharged. That's really very huge. That's precisely what I was talking about, the next innovative level of electric cars, because you simply have charging times that are currently even 4 minutes faster than the already speedy charging times of the Taycan. And that, though the battery's larger. Now discuss battery size. The Taycan, the actually new one, I must say, because facelift doesn't apply here anymore, no longer has the 83.6 kilowatt hours net as before, but again, 2 battery sizes. The small battery has 83.6 kilowatt hours, just like the large one used to. Yes, even with a small battery, you're now going as far as you did with the big one. And the big battery now has 105 gross, which results in 97 net kilowatt hours. This means you have 14 kilowatt hours more battery. And you still manage 4 minutes faster from 10 to 80%. Namely, In 18 minutes, it goes from 10 to 80% for a 100 kilowatt hour battery. That's incredibly brutal. Moreover, the car is quite impressively efficient. So, what you recharge, you actually also use up very, very slowly indeed. So currently, in the field of electric mobility, despite Lucid Air, despite Xiaopeng G9 and the Lotus Eletre, the car, even though it's not on the PPI platform, it certainly does charge up the fastest, delivering the most kilowatt hours. And that's something. And more, it's quite independent of the temperature, because we must not forget, what are we dealing with here? Approached with a battery temperature of 38 degrees, not with the 15 where it already hits its sweet spot. So this is insane, and I have no clue how they do it. With this battery, this is a nickel manganese cobalt battery, so NMC. It's not the 611 anymore, but the 822. So modified cell chemistry brings so very much that you achieve such performance out of it. And now, drum roll please, how many kilos has he lost? The battery, 10 kilos, weighs 10 kilos less. Might not seem like much, but it's bigger after all. Crazy stuff. Guys, this is really crazy stuff. And as I mentioned, with Ionity across Europe, you then have the chance to charge for peanuts, basically 33 cents per kilowatt hour peanuts. At a speed like you can't elsewhere except stations handling over 300 kilowatts. And those 20-25 kilo that indeed go over 300, I would also be reluctant to give away at another station. So in this very sense, charging chapter, impressive, right? What's your opinion? Write it below. Now, let's review the lift feature as I open it. Attention. Oh, the mother-in-law will be glad, especially with her back issues. Let's quickly accelerate our pace noticeably. From 0 to 100, incredibly fast now, with a powerful 700 kilowatt of output. Oh my dear Lord. Oh my dear Lord, indeed. You've heard in studio how power distribution functions. 570 kilo standard, we said. Launch control adds 130 kilo to 700 kilo. And then there's the push to pass. Push to pass sounds kind of harmless, but it means that on top of the 570 kilo, since you're not starting with launch control, but rather accelerating at higher revs, you don't get the full 700 kilowatt, but instead you are actually equipped with 570 plus an extra 70. That really means, if you think about it, 640 kilowatt for intermittent, notably quick acceleration, mind you. You can do that by turning the dial to Sport Plus mode, for instance. Then there's push to pass, which I'll show you. The push to pass is precisely where the thumb is placed. Yes, exactly. It's in F1 as well. PTP, push to pass. And that's honestly supposed to really surprise me, I was actually told. I doubt it. I've just recently driven the Dacia Spring Electric. What's the Porsche going to do now? I'm ready when you are. Yes, it is actually quite highly intense, dear folks. So it's really very crazy, the way it so powerfully pushes. But well, for the record, to finally close this chapter, since everyone's asking and wants to know, we've got to answer them fairly. No, it's actually not quite as extremely intense as the innovative Tesla Model S Plaid is. But I certainly wouldn't take 3 Tesla Model S Plaids over just one. Porsche Taycan Turbo S either. I mean, more to it than that, as mentioned, the suspension brakes, these brakes right here. And with that, the long chapter finally ends. Back to the studio. And I must say, yes, you might find a Model S outpacing you on the highway, just zooming past you, easily. Owning this vehicle doesn't bother you in the slightest, because you chose it. Aware you could have picked a Tesla Model S Plaid for precisely 2.7 times less. But you didn't, see, there's a reason for that. So how was the ride? What are your thoughts on this particular matter? Do you dislike it, or perhaps find some enjoyment in it? What's your gift choice? Tesla Model S Plaid or Turbo S, even though Turbo S is slightly slower? Well, don't really need to ask, truly, I know my answer, but I'd like to know what you think. Now let's take a look inside this one. But we've seen much from inside. After all, things don't change. That's why we're not doing a trunk check or anything. But there's a new interior now. See these seats. Then, let's go inside because we want to glimpse the infotainment system. There have been changes there too. Here you can see these distinct checkered patterns in the seat I really wouldn't go for, honestly. But honestly, I find it interesting how, with the Porsche 911 Sport Classic, which has incredibly increased in value in such a short time, and that is, I do believe, truly a kind of faux leather variant for individuals who genuinely want it to be leather-free. Because when you just touch right here, so no matter where exactly on the top, it's all even much more rubberized or plastic. So it's covered, so still soft, but just not leather. You have to know if that's what you want as a Porsche driver, but there's definitely the option with an Alcantara steering wheel, and let's take a look at the rest now. I've just realized how absolutely essential it is that it possesses this lift function for getting in and out, because my dear partner, with whom I co-founded Evium, also drives a Taycan, and it's indeed quite annoying when I occasionally join him for a business meal, getting in because it's so low. I'm not really used to that, even with the EQS Brabus. And, well, that's a cool feature. What keeps happening here, due to the positioning, is that you keep hitting it with a shoe down here and end up making shoe marks. That's why, you know, the drill Quisica Maniac 391. Oh God, just seeing that, Francesco. That plastic right there. Porsche, why did you not do it? It's truly really bad. So this plastic, the door sill itself is quite nice really, where A4S is written. The brushed aluminum, why don't you make everything like this? It really has. Those 11 euros were gone, that's terrible. So in such a car, exactly where the first emotion, what you see when you lift your foot over into a Porsche is such a plastic door sill. Really bad, but they have, I think, down here, I mean, why does that sound so hollow? It's now covered with Alcantara down below. Sounds a bit hollow. The craftsmanship on the Porsche is gorgeous. Everything, absolutely everything down here. It's just, I don't know, I don't like it. Otherwise, everything in here is covered in either leather or some soft material. This down here too, it's not ultra soft, but definitely soft. But that is included in the highest trim. Now we are sitting in the Lilac 4S model. This handle here is also leather covered. And here we have soft gloss, very nice. No need to open and then close it. This item, equipped with very high quality leather, is actually quite nice indeed. Transitions between different components are also harmonious. The steering wheel is very thin. Francesco doesn't like that. Honestly, I do like it. Well, beautiful, don't you think? A bit thin for a sports car? You could live with it, right? Yes, if it's a Porsche. Up here, this is plastic again, just like with the Macan. Dislike it too, so they might have covered it in leather. Not sure if it's for the Turbo S. This piece here, it is all leather. Then course, needed watch. Everything's practically same, really. One criticism before we take another quick look at the multimedia system here is that once again, I have to put my phone into the cup holder. Why? I mean, I really have no... Somehow you do actually have wireless charging, now 15 watts instead of the former 5, and it's cooled, so the phone won't overheat. I truly don't even know if my Fold fits in here at all. Or this one, look. Look, get me in a wide shot, please. If I want to reach that, look what I really must do. Just like those contortionists on Super Talent. It's really silly. This mechanism, how am I supposed to reach it? I've got this thing here and it doesn't go any further back either. It would indeed be much cooler if it flipped. There's absolutely no storage space here. If two of you are having drinks, where should I place my phone? Sure, you can still place it here. But here, just look closely. Go to the other side. Now look, see? Fingers fit perfectly in here. I'm able to sneak in just like this, like in War of the Worlds. Things coming directly through the window. These pipes with cameras on the front. Look, my hand, see? So can't fit it in here. Then the phone slipped. Where? Now in wide shot, the hunt starts. What's this storage for exactly? It's not important, kindly excuse the car. Alcantara headliner, outrageously costly to add. Carbon trim, if desired, over plastic. Pricey indeed, but a Porsche is simply not for all to drive, really. By the way, we have this, I can't see now, but an altitude display. I noticed that while driving. It's cool because you have a permanent display of the altitude where you are above sea level. I think that's important, I think that's cool. My wife always says I'm a freak about it. So, and beyond that, here, so we've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto on board, and a service where you go, oh yeah, YouTube, awesome, watching movies while charging, I have to burst that bubble for you. It's a logo that looks just like YouTube. It's a provider. That Porsche was totally thrilled about.
I've never heard of it in my entire life. Screen Hits TV, do you know it?
He doesn't know it. So Screen Hits TV is definitely on board. And with Screen Hits TV, yeah, great. You have to establish a Wi-Fi connection. You can. So Screen Hits TV is such a provider where, for example, Amazon Prime Video is integrated. If you only have Netflix now and a subscription for Netflix to watch movies, but no Amazon Prime Video, then you're out of luck. Because currently only Amazon Prime Video works. No YouTube implemented and also no Netflix. That's coming, but initially you won't have it. Is there also a new provider with the EQS now? Why don't they just slap 2 damn apps on it? Like Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, that's all you need really. Those are the top 3 streaming items. YouTube, course, crucial for you guys, right? So, I really just don't get it. It simply doesn't quite fit in my brain why one wouldn't do that. And here's the display mentioned, which I totally can't see. Francesco, however, crystal clear. But I also notice if you deviate slightly, you already can't see half of the display. You see that? Noticed it driving on curves and such. How's the system general in use? Talking about speed, there's absolutely no real issue. Let's see if it lags, like noticeably trails behind. It's perfectly okay. Yes. Yes, it's still lagging a bit, but obviously we can't expect any more. Except with Google, Tesla, there indeed the zoom's much quicker. What were you mentioning? The camera? The rear cam, thanks. So a really quick teaser. The Porsche Taycan has without doubt the absolute worst rear view camera in the whole automotive industry. If you think Dacia Spring has it, no, Porsche Taycan does. They kept the hardware but changed the software. Is it really better? I don't know, so the potato is gone. So yes, it's better, definitely better. What views do we have? So this one, but it's digital, sort of like this, right? What I really truly wish for, and you definitely can't see it, is that we also have someone actively holding the light. Thanks for that, by the way. And the door's open too, you can't see it. Opening the door. Aha, there it surely goes, handy. So the camera has improved. Let's sum this up, if you will, but unfortunately here, I simply don't see a rim camera right here to potentially show the rim in real live time directly through the rearview mirror, which of course is quite disastrous with some rims. So honestly, I was kind of hoping for a bit more here with the camera setup, but it's also seriously squished, the green one. Look here, it's actually already just like that. So the entire system is really running smoother now, that's for sure. And lagging, yeah, it's not bad at all. So you can definitely use it. Great hat planning and stuff. We see here how many chargers out of many are available. I really appreciate that too. And yes, I've actually already shown you the rest. Honestly, not much more to say. Here's the climate control unit, unchanged, absolutely. Yes, indeed, that's the update. Here we have 77% now. We could draw up to 20 kilowatt, like I told you at the charging station. And here, you see 19 degrees battery temperature and we're on the scale. This means we still have so much leeway here that we can take advantage of before it can't draw full charging power anymore. But we are now just too high in the state of charge for it to really charge significantly better. But the temperature would be perfect, right? Exactly. So that was the interior. In conclusion, shall we now go, my friends? Right, here we do indeed proceed. 2 significant points this car I'm quite smitten with. Point 1, that's just the lack of turbocharged spirit. So speaking, when the Porsche crest remains golden. You indeed witnessed it earlier with the turbo, it becomes grey, somewhat colorless. And the logo on the back too. That was one thing. The other is, with the Taycan, there's finally a feature that of course should have been included at that price already. But my Mercedes doesn't have it either, which is really embarrassing and often bothers me. Soft close. Look at this. I didn't aim to show that, but the soft close. Now it closed exactly, and of course went back up because it thought I was getting in. Now it'll go back down again. That's such a cool feature, right? It looks so awesome too. Just like that in front of the ice cream shop. It's really cool. So you've got a soft close now. Why is that cool? Cool because sometimes I go out, dash across, see bus, oh, gotta run over, want bakery, closed door, not shut right. It snaps shut easily, and then I must run back like an idiot and close the door on such an expensive car instead of it pulling shut. So those are actually the 2 main points I wanted to tell you, and now my 2 criticisms. In the background, of course, the very beautiful vehicles for you, which are the 2 criticisms. If you buy a Taycan now, this sensational new car with these fantastic figures, you have to live with the fact that even if it says Turbo S on the back, because you're willing to spend at least 200,000 euros without the optional extras, you'll still only have an 11 kW AC charger. And that's an absolute no-go in my eyes. I'm carrying around this very no-go with me in the Mercedes, since it was added later on. But an AC charger of $22 kilos is a hardware component. You can't simply unlock that. There are on-demand services, even at Porsche, where you say, hey, I want this headlight or that one, which the predecessor who drove the car before me didn't have. Yes, but not with the AC charger. This means you have to live with the fact that you're now buying the Turbo S for 240,000 euros, and you only get an 11 kilowatt AC charger with 97 net kilowatt hours. Why is that good? We're standing outside. Or why is that crappy? Conversely, we're outside now with the EQS. Charging with Juice Booster, we could also do 22 kilowatts, at least if I had the Duo with me. Exactly, now Trio with me only does 11, can't do more than 11. Booster 22 kilo of 5 hours. But I can charge only at 11 kilo, that's all you'll manage here. That possibly could follow later, but not if you're really aiming to be among the very first to drive the new Taycan. So that's a major minus point, and the second point, it's not quite as significant as a minus. I do indeed find it somewhat disappointing that all the numerous technological advancements packed in there aren't visibly noticeable at all. I can see it since I am deeply involved with it, but those who are merely slightly into it won't be like, wow, look, there's the new Taycan. Like with the 911, you'd say, wow, look, there's the new 911. Because it now features those continuous light strips and is sleek, or that the turbo now has the exhaust pipes in the middle, or GC3 Touring, no idea, you can see the changes. Here you don't see them as much. Sure, the illuminated lettering, different front bumper or wheel design, but for that, you really have to know your stuff. And I actually would have appreciated it if what's done here was further highlighted. By the way, the headlights also improve the drag coefficient so much since the edges aren't here anymore. But instead, it's just a flat surface, and the wind can glide past it much better. So you can see it, but not super clearly. And it really would have been nice if you could see this is in fact the new Taycan. But that's a minor critique. Everything else sweeps away everything I know right now. And I've really tried everything. And yes, I would actually trade my EQS Brabus for a Turbo S Sport Turismo right now, because you'll likely get just as far simply because of the efficiency. You can charge way more intensely than anything else. You have an even more sophisticated charging schedule system, and it's resilient to temperature, to state of charge. This is, without any doubt, the ultimate culmination of what's possible. Now in the world of electric mobility. Porsche really absolutely nailed it. Man, they truly just showed precisely how it's done. They really proved their very point. Awesome. Do subscribe, glad you're here. In the description now, see the Helvetia code if wanting a Porsche. You can opt for the Helvetia e-car insurance. Other products below, for instance, for cleaning that beautiful car. Dry Wash Wonder, for example, washing without water with the Maniac product. Check this out and please subscribe to our channel now. I'm pleased about that, and soon, detailed presentations of these amazing cars will be available. You'll get to know their exact consumption.